Hello, and good afternoon to the System Saving Live session. My name is Federico Semeraro. I am a consultant in anesthesia intensive care Bologna, Italy, and Science and Education BLS co-chair for ERC. This is a very exciting session. Just to remind to people that the full version of the presentation is available below on ERC Congress. And another reminder for all of you, please send your question on the right of the website. I'm going to invite my co-chair, Hildegard, to say hello to everybody before I introduce the first speaker. Hildegard?
Thank you very much, Federico. Yes, hello to everyone. My name is Hildegard. I am a nurse and I come from Iceland. And I work as a director in a hospital, but I'm also serving as the ERC secretary within the ERC board. I'm also looking very much forward to this session and give it back to Federico, who's going to introduce the first speaker.
Great. It is a real pleasure for me to introduce Sir Andy Lockie, a dear friend and incredible ambassador for World Start Heart. Andy Lockie is a consultant in emergency medicine in the UK, Vice President of the Resuscitation Council UK, and co-chair of ILCO World Start Heart. Please, Andy.
Thank you very much for your overly generous introduction there, Federico. It's an absolute delight to talk to you about World Restart Heart 2020. Those of you who have seen the video that was uploaded this morning from me will note that it was recorded in mid-September. So Restart a Heart was yet to happen at that stage. So I'm delighted to be able to provide a little bit of an update today as to how things actually went last Friday on the 16th of October. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge and thank my co-lead for ILCOR World Restart Heart, and that's Professor Bernd Bottinger that you can see there in the centre of the screen alongside me. Bernd and I have co-led World Restart Heart for the last 3 years, and it's a fantastic partnership. We certainly work really well together, and I really appreciate his wise wisdom and guidance as well. World Restart Heart, as you know, originally came from Europe way back about 8 years ago when the European Parliament passed a written declaration suggesting that there should be a day every year around Restart a Heart, and that was an initiative that was led by Maria Georgiou, and the rest of us in ERC followed his lead with that. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an update with regards to World Restart a Heart 2020. The organisations that are involved with Restart a Heart are global. So all of the ILCOR councils are involved, so councils involving Canada, America, South Africa, Asia, Australia and New Zealand, as well as, of course, ourselves in Europe. But the ILCOR World Restart a Heart banner covers far more. So it also covers resuscitation councils from the Middle East, from India, from Sri Lanka, as well as the various organisations that you can see with the logos on the screen here. And in addition to the presentation that is online, we now have the logos for the World Federation of Intensive and Critical Care and the International Federation for Emergency Medicine, who are fully supportive of World Restart a Heart. One of the key themes that I mentioned in my presentation was that we now have a new enemy with regards to cardiac arrest. COVID-19 has really set us back big time in terms of outcomes from out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. And I mentioned about the COVID equation of doom, in that COVID directly attacks the heart and the lungs, so therefore is increasing cardiac arrest rates that way. But also it's causing more social isolation. More people are therefore having their cardiac arrests on their own rather than being in public alongside other people who would potentially do bystander CPR. And finally, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty around COVID, and that's the key area that we need to target to try and improve cardiac arrest survival rates again. And that's one of the key areas of World Restart a Heart, to get the messaging out to help with that. So This year for World Restart a Heart 2020, we had a new way of targeting COVID, and that was the power of social media, and in particular our hashtag World Restart a Heart. That was the way that we planned to get the messaging out in the absence of face-to-face training. And it's been a really, really successful initiative. So here's a quick summary of what happened around the world last Friday. The day started wonderfully with some beautiful pictures from one of my favorite countries in the world, from New Zealand, from Mount Victoria, where they saw the sun rising on 16th of October for the first time in the world. And there were some beautiful pictures from there. In Australia, a really great guy called Greg Page, who was the original Yellow Wiggle, which is apparently a children's TV program. It's been going for many years. Greg, almost tragically, had a cardiac arrest in January of this year. Fortunately, he survived due to bystander CPR, but also to a use of a defibrillator. And he now wants to help get the message out. And he's produced a really, really infectious song for kids to help them train. Greg is an absolute wonderful ambassador for all issues around World Restart a Heart. There were initiatives going on in the Far East, in Asia, and in South Africa as well. There was a social media campaign that went on there. Myself and Bernd were really proud to join a live webinar with the Indian Resuscitation Council, where they've released a postage stamp to commemorate World Restart a Heart. Unfortunately, our colleagues in Sri Lanka had just had a surge of COVID, so they had to go online as opposed to face, but they're still really engaged with the initiative. In America, there was a short video from a famous actor from the program New Amsterdam, Jocko Sims, who's led people through what to do with cardiac arrest. And in Canada, they've used a graphic to help with their social media activity as well. Again, Bernd and I were really privileged to join a roundtable symposium in the evening in Brazil. One of the key things was the hashtag My Song Can Save Lives, where we invited people who had got songs or music that was at the right tempo for cardiac arrest. And we're amazed to see the Vienna Philharmonic share the Radetzky March, but also Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber tweeted about Phantom of the Opera being the right beat for resuscitation. But probably the biggest super spreader on Twitter was a guy who's a comedian, but also an ophthalmologist from America, who you can see, this is a screenshot from today, his tweet, because he had a cardiac arrest, his tweet has been seen by over 500,000 people. So that was really phenomenal. So what was the impact of this year's Restart a Heart Day? First and foremost, with the help and the support of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent, the messaging was sent to 192 countries. That's virtually every country on this planet. And that is phenomenal. And we really thank Red Cross and Red Crescent for their support there. With regards to social media reach, when we're looking purely at 3 platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram Business, and purely the use of these 3 hashtags, there were nearly 74 million combined reach and impressions from that initiative. And that doesn't count all of the tweets, all of the posts that didn't use the hashtag or used another hashtag. So you can see that the messaging was getting far and wide, and that was a phenomenal result. So concluding, for World Restart a Heart 2021 and beyond, we don't know where we're going to be with regards to COVID. It may still be around. There may be something else that replaces it. So it's taught us to think about different ways that we can actually get messaging around there. But it's even more important. We know that cardiac arrest rates are up. We know that there's nervousness with regards to doing bystander CPR. So we need to work around those limitations. We need to use it as an opportunity to develop new and innovative approaches to education, to online education, to self-learning. Your 2 hands can save a life. This is more important than ever before. And I'd just like to close by thanking once again my co-lead, Bernd Mottiger, but also I'd like to give a special thank you to Helene van Groeven from ERC, who has really masterminded our social media and all the comms around World Restart a Heart. with meticulous efficiency, and thank you to her. But mainly thank you to all the people who engage with a Restart Heart. We celebrate it on one day a year. It is an all-round a year event, and we will be planning for next year again. Thank you to everybody who participated.
Thank you very much, Andy. Amazing success. This is a very nice mission from ERC. I'd like to remind to the audience that you can send your question to the speaker through the ERC Congress website. Thank you, Andy. I have two questions for you. First, I appreciate your thought about training for the future in the COVID-19 area. What do you think for the next World Startup Day next year? How we can manage some event, some training event online? What do you think?
Absolutely. As I said, I don't think any of us really know where we're going to be next year. We hope that we will have vanquished COVID, but we don't know. And I think a bit like we're looking at hybrid versions with the conference, we will look at hybrid versions with regards to teaching. Ideally, we want to be delivering face-to-face training. We know that that is the best way to deliver training. But as with every other aspect of healthcare and education, we're now looking at the various digital solutions. And I know that there are various solutions that have been proposed, and you'll be hearing about one at the end of this hour, whereby people can deliver training over video whilst being able to analyze CPR metrics. There's also obviously many different apps whereby people can self-learn CPR as well. So an example of that from the Resuscitation Council of the UK is the Lifesaver app. And essentially, we need to just be developing more and more of those initiatives just to try and get people to learn how to do CPR in a time when they can't do it face-to-face.
Thank you, Andy. I take two comments from Slido. One from Naomi. Hello, Naomi from Brazil, Kids Save Life from Brazil. What is the most important future World Restart Heart aims? To have one in each family trained for CPR? This from Naomi.
Yes, thank you very much, Naomi. And Naomi is a leading light in Brazil. She hosted the roundtable event that we attended last Friday. So thank you very much for that. Ultimately, we want to improve bystander CPR. We want to improve patient survival from cardiac arrest. It has been mooted, maybe having 1 in 7 people around the world trained in CPR. Essentially, we need to get the message out that it is okay. You can save a life whilst keeping yourself safe. And that, I think that's going to be our major objective over this next year.
Again, thank you, Andy. From Michael Boben, we have an ambassador in Vienna. He said, I would like to send to Vienna Philharmonic as a thanks your presentation. So please send your presentation to Michael Boben. And Gavin Perkins asked, what is your favorite tune to do CPR? Sorry,
Gavin who? Never heard of it.
Which is your favorite tune to do CPR to? The song.
So clearly Staying Alive. Clearly Staying Alive. I really do not like Baby Shark. Just actually saying it gets it into my brain, which is bad. But yes, I'm a child of the 70s. So Staying Alive.
Okay, Staying Alive. Me too. From Walter Renier, why do ERC change each year the message? A question from Walter Renier.
The basic message is still the same, but I think we've just got to keep it fresh. We've also, so for some years we focused a lot on children, and that's not the only population that we need to be addressing. The message all throughout has been your 2 hands can save a life. The theme may alter a little bit, but the messaging is still the same.
Andy, the last for you, I'm not responsible for this. Gavin said if you can...
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I think we lost him. I think, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, so I can just take over while Federico is looking at his technical side.
Yeah.
I think he was going to mention that, and to emphasize that people can listen to the different songs in the break room. So I think it's good to point out that please go and have a look, and perhaps you can make a poll of what's your favorite song out there later on.
Absolutely. I mean, that's in the Opera House. I mean, the other thing, and a comment has just appeared, and it has certainly prompted me, is one of the other things that we need to do whilst spreading a generic message out there about what can happen. We also know that there are health inequalities, that there are inequalities in access to training, and that's not just in high, low and medium resource countries, that's within the same countries. And it may be that different communities have got different access to resources, or and I think that's a major piece of work going ahead that we need to look at, so that we give everybody equitable access to the skills that they can then save a life.
Yeah, that's very good, Antti, because I was going to mention that, because first of all, I want to congratulate you on your initiatives and how far you have come with this. And wow, 192 countries is just amazing. And the use of the social media is also fantastic. But of course, like you say, you have to look at who can apply that kind of technology, because I have to admit I'm a bit worried about the people who are not using the social media, and those are the people who stay in the homes of the people, and we know that many of the cardiac arrests they take place in their homes. So I agree with you, that's important to look at that.
Absolutely, but and again, we've got a comment there about some of the upsides. I mean, it sounds odd to talk about the upsides from COVID, but there are some upsides, and that is the greater use of technology. And it is interesting that the reach out with technology enables us to get into communities that previously we would never have actually gained access to. So there are some positives.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for your talk, Antti. There will probably be more questions later on, but I think we'll just give the others a chance to give a summary on their presentation from their pre-recorded presentations, which, by the way, are at the bottom of on the platform, and everybody should have access to that who are registered for this Congress. But the next speaker is Mark Wilson, and I have the pleasure of introducing him now. He's a consultant in neurosurgery and pre-hospital care specialist in the Imperial Hospitals in London. And he is going to talk about how we can use technology to get help, and mainly, I think, focus on a GoodSam app. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to summarize about that, Mark.
Thank you, Hilda.
Give it back to you.
Thank you very much. And I think, Andy, I think there was actually a calling there for you to sing. Most people were encouraging you to karaoke. Janet Bray and Gavin most of that was trying to get you to sing. And I think there should be a resource karaoke evening on Zoom at some point.
I'm just sending an appropriate response to them now.
I thought very good, very good. So thank you very much for asking me to give a little summary. This is obviously very focused on what I'm involved, which is the GoodSam side of stuff. I will try and share my screen if that's okay. Let me just start this up. So you should be able to see my screen here. He said you do it right. There you go. You should be able to see my screen, hopefully, and hopefully you see my slides here. Okay, so thank you very much for asking me to give a little summary here. I was asked about using technology to get help, and by that obviously we mean CPR initially, and that's what we're mostly thinking of here, and that's what GoodSam's been doing for quite a long while now, for like the last 6-7 years. It's been alerting people who have had a cardiac, people who can provide CPR and AEDs to people who are in cardiac arrest, and that system is now very much embedded with ambulance services, mostly across the UK, but also around the world and other places as well, and displaying AEDs, and it's very advanced in terms of its governance, and that's why it's been working very well. But I'm just going to touch on some other ways that we can provide help more extensively than that. And actually, it's funny how things lead from one thing into another, because of our ability to geolocate people in need and geolocate people who can provide help. We were asked by NHS England to provide a platform for volunteers to respond to the COVID response. So that's been the biggest thing over the last few months. And so we've actually recruited 750,000 people now who can go and provide help in terms of check-in and chat, food delivery, food and pharmacy delivery, patient transport, for example, equipment transport as well. And that's working about 20,000 tasks a day. So if you consider that, that's pretty big. That's bigger than Uber and Deliveroo and things like that in terms of deployment of people. It's effectively 750,000 drivers on the system. That's really big. And obviously that's sort of different to the cardiac arrest kind of stuff, but it does lead into other opportunities. So for example, we pretty much have someone on every street now in the UK who's on this system. If we can train them in CPR, if they aren't already trained in CPR, and then get them on to be responding to cardiac arrests, that will be an amazing thing if we can really increase our numbers like that. And obviously, as Andy's already alluded to, and I'm sure you've been discussing over the last few days, the survival out of hospital cardiac arrest has kind of gone off and really taken a bit of a hit with COVID. Hopefully, if we can encourage people that it is safe to do CPR, check for breathing, use your, put your mask on that everyone has now got in their pocket, put your mask on, do CPR, wash your hands afterwards, then actually we can really hopefully improve out of hospital cardiac arrest from this, rather than letting COVID actually do the damage that it has kind of done to out of hospital cardiac arrest. So that's the kind of alerting dispatching functions that Good Sam's been doing. We've also been doing a couple of other things. The platform's used quite a lot now by agencies and organizations. There are about 200 something organizations on the platform now that use it for communicating with staff in real time, and the staff that can be used for major incidents and other things as well. But that's quite important for controlling incidents, for people being able to video on scene. So for example, if you deploy a CFR or a member of the public to a incident and they're not sure if it is a cardiac arrest, there might be epilepsy, for example, they can video stream directly to control, so that control can see that and give a bit more advice, better clinical advice. And that's something that's sort of built into the app now as well. And then the final thing that I was just talking over in the longer talk is around the use of video. And this is something that we've been pioneering for the last 2 or 3 years, but COVID has really accelerated it. And this is the ability to open up anyone's cameras remotely without the need for an app. So they don't need to download anything. There's no plugins, there's no complications. It's not Teams, it's not Zoom. It just works. So they just click a link and they can see immediately what's going on scene. And you can measure pulse through that as well. And that's being used by a number of organizations now across the US and other places as well around the world, especially across the UK, and including by police services to provide instant help. And it also locates people as well. Unlike What 3 Words, where you have to download an app to do that, you can just click the link, it will locate the patient as well. And that's it. That itself, even without the video, has saved many, many lives. So all these things are using technology that's in our pockets that we can use anytime. It's just there. You just have to get it right and get the communities and the technology and the governance around this all to work together. So that was a brief 3 or 4 minute summary of what the talk is, which I think you can look down below. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, my email address is there. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you very much for this good, nice overview, Mark. And I remind people to look at the pre-recorded session if they want to have more information about this app, and also they can go to your website, because that provides many good information about how this technology can be used. So as I say, this is a very good way of activating the response of especially first responders or healthcare workers. I can see though that you are on your website talking about the volunteers. So my first question is, are you even thinking about using this kind of technique, and have it introduced more by the public? Is that something that you've been thinking about?
I'm so sorry, Helen. I just couldn't hear you then. It just broke up for a second as you asked the question.
Okay, because this Good Sam app is mainly focused at first responders and healthcare workers, although it's used a bit by the volunteers as well. But is this something that you will be using by the public? Is that something that you're going to introduce?
So in Ambulance Victoria and New Zealand, the public can sign up, self-certify as being happy to do CPR, and they can be on the system. And we're doing the same thing in the UK as well, but different ambulance services have different rules about who they'll alert, and they can control all that. But the 750,000 people who are on as COVID responders aren't NHS people. They are volunteers who are doing mostly non-clinical tasks. As we head into winter, we're working with St John Ambulance and other organisations as well, with NHS England, to be able to deliver clinical tasks as well, especially around flu vaccination and other things. So there's an a number of things that you can do with this, but it's very much for the public support as well. And this includes things like, clearing your driveway of snow, all these sorts of things we can start to do to try and help neighborly help within communities.
Okay, that's fantastic. I just remind people or the audience to use the Slido if they have a question. I'm just wondering here. Yes, here's one question from Naomi in Brazil again. She's asking, do all countries of the Red Cross Federation have this kind of a system of good sound?
Yeah, so anyway, it's used globally, and in Brazil, actually, your fire service use it. And Naomi, if you want to get in touch, please do, because actually, I think there's a great opportunity for you to use this more widely as well. So please do get in touch, yeah.
Okay, that's great. And you have another question from Jasor. So can the phone work out if the patient needs chest compression as well as using not breathing normally, not moving?
So that's a really good question. So I'll send you some stuff. Actually, we've done some studies. We can put the phone from the Alert app on someone's chest and it measures pulse very, very accurately. So yes, it can do it through that, and B, you can do it through the pulse system as well. We've not done a proper study using the facial recognition pulse system on that, but with the you can use gyroscopes in your phone as well, and that is bang on. Yes.
Okay, that's very good. And then he's also interested in who's paying for this. Yes, is asking the same question.
So we run this as a not-for-profit. We run it as cheap as we really do run this as cheap as we possibly can. So, but we do charge organizations for different aspects of it. So we charge organizations to cover the server costs, for example, if they're using video, and we charge organizations for the integration for the ambulance service dispatch type stuff. So no volunteers ever have to pay anything, but for the ambulance services to integrate it, it costs a small amount to be able to do that.
Okay, that's good to hear. Hopefully that will, as you say, it's in the benefit of the people who are at stake. So that's very important. A lot of people are commenting on that this is a great talk, and they congratulate you on this, as well as Gavin Perkin is congratulating you on the award of an OBE in the Queen's birthday honors. I don't know if you want to tell us anything about that.
He should be knighted. That's what everyone should be knighted. It's all nonsense. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. And then it's perhaps a final question. Is there any? It's from Walid Oudman. I'm not quite sure where this person comes from, but is there any consideration or experience to legal issues concerning the application of this app?
Yeah, so this is not more than a 1-minute answer, but always do what's right. And basically the legal system will follow you. The legal system doesn't really know, because we're doing stuff that's new and a lot of this. Firstly, you're protected in most countries by a Good Samaritan law. In the UK, that's the Heroism Act from a few years ago. That's the first thing that covers you. If you're a doctor, nurse, paramedic, then normally your own indemnity will cover you as well. And then there's NHSLA or resolution that can also provide some cover as well. The important thing here is you shouldn't get hung up on asking people to get their own insurance. And we've taken legal advice out over the years. If you say to people, oh, you need first aid insurance, then there is a pot of money for people to come and sue. And that's not what you want to do, because then you'll start a process of it's normal to sue for your broken ribs. So don't do that. Just encourage people not to have any form of indemnity, and actually keep this as a Good Samaritan Act that you're providing on scene. And I think that's a really important thing for anyone that we have these issues in the US and other places as well. But actually, once you work through it, it all makes sense just to do the right thing.
Okay. And then perhaps a question from myself in relation to this issue about the videos. I was just wondering, did the what do you call it? The GDPR laws, have they been?
No, they're fine. So GDPR law is absolutely fine. So all you have to do is make sure everything stays in country and is anonymized. And that we've done that in all the way through. So actually, it's straightforward to follow all GDPR and HIPAA requirements, and still make things cloud-based. That's absolutely fine.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Federico. Sorry.
Yeah, there's. I just remind people to put the questions or comments or whatever they want to put here on the Slido, and we can get back to that later in that session. But having said that, I think we will just go from you now, Mark, and thank you very much for this exciting initiative. And And it's easy to see that, well, technology can definitely help to save lives, and that's our mission, and that's what we want to do. So again, thank you, Mark, and I hand the moderation back to my co-chair, who I think is back on this live streaming. So Federico.
Thank you.
Yes, I have. Sorry, I have a. You know, I am a geek, so I have a pair of questions for Mark. Thank you for your brilliant presentation and for this amazing project. We have a similar app in our region that is managed by this. We have three dispatch centers in Emilia Romagna. It's the region that where I live. How you can manage the registration? The question is. You consider useful or not that your volunteer is trained to BLS for registration, or it's better to open the registration to everybody without any?
So yeah, so this is a very big topic again, but basically the Good Sam system is highly governed. So the ambulance services have complete control. We know of everyone who signs up, they have to load up their certificate or their passport or their work ID when they sign up and they get checked. And there are lots of organizations that check their own people. But this means that everyone can be grouped. So the ambulance services can alert, for example, paramedics over a 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer radius. Whereas they could, and this is what happens in New Zealand, the public will be alerted over a smaller radius, so that you're effectively providing governance that people who are maybe less well trained will only be supporting people in their street and things like that. So there's lots of different options as to how you can control this when you put people into different groups. So it's a bit more technically complex, but that's the best way of getting governance secured.
The second question for you is, during COVID-19, we struggle a lot and we debate internally if keep open or not the notification of our region, because obviously we are a little bit worried about engage volunteer during lockdown. Are you aware what is the...
Yeah, so places where the numbers are going down are now restarting. So again, New Zealand, Ambulance Victoria, and places around there are restarting. UK land is restarting well, but it's working on a way that is usually it starts with the professional tiers, so the doctors, paramedics who get the risks, or probably more get the risks. And then I think as long as you've got consent and people are aware that they don't have to go, they're only being alerted, they're not being dispatched. These people are being alerted. Can you go and help? And you've got, this is big for the community. We really need to get the message out that the risk of that person having COVID is small. The risk of you catching COVID for them is tiny. The risk of you dying of COVID is infinitesimally small. The risk of them dying if you don't do CPR is massive. So therefore, we need to kind of battle against this fear. And a lot of the ambulance services are putting out this fear because you've got to remember, they've told their staff to dress up in level 3 PPE to do these patients. So they're trying to send out two messages at the same time, which is difficult, but we kind of need to really sort of get that clear that actually it's terrible if we don't do CPR. So yeah, that's my view. I think that's everyone's view.
Thank you, Mark, for this is a very nice comment. I totally agree with you.
And we can do it in lots of languages as well, by the way. It works in all languages. There's another trick that I can show you later on. But
yeah. No, thank you so much, because the balance between the fear of COVID-19 against the risk of death in relation to cardiac arrest is absolutely agree with you. Yeah. And
I apologize, I've got to go to another meeting now, but thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Mark, for your last comment. It's a real pleasure to introduce Freddie Lippert from Copenhagen. Is the CEO of Copenhagen Emergency Medical Service. Please, Freddie, talk about machine learning. I'll try to not ask nothing, but could be not easy for me.
Thank you, Federico. Well, I really want to comment on some of the things that Mark just talked on, but we can maybe come back to that in the final part of this session. But my talk, well, it relates to that new and very important chapter in the ERC guidelines, the chapter System Saving Lives. Federico is chairing that one. It actually says that it takes a system to save a life, and new technology is part of that system. We just have a clear illustration of that. COVID changed a lot of things and helped technology forward faster. And a good example is what Andy told us about World Restart a Heart Day. We had some barriers there, but also social media helped us to actually get more people engaged in resuscitation. Mark told about GoodSam as a new technology tool to activate first responders, and also video streaming. And we're doing video streaming in Copenhagen using a GoodSam solution. And it is actually promising what we can see and what we can change, including making sure that we provide better CPR, higher quality CPR. But the topic that I presented, and you can get my slides there, is about artificial intelligence or machine learning. The background is that we in Denmark have taken the approach defined by Resuscitation Academy in Seattle and by the Global Resuscitation Alliance, meaning try to work us through the 10 steps to improve survival. And we have triple survival. We have a bystander rate now of 80%. And we have more than in Denmark, for a population of 5.8, we have 100,000 civilian first responders. And we have a survival rate of 130 survivors per 1 million population. And that is equal to Seattle, actually. We achieved that 2 years ago. So, however, we want to do better. So how can we do better? And we looked through the chain of survival and the different steps there, and realized what we have known for, what most of us have known for a number of years, that the first link in the chain of survival is actually the most important one. Survival depends on early intervention, bystander CPR, and use of AED. And early intervention depends on early recognition of cardiac arrest. And it seems that we missed early recognition of cardiac arrest in a substantial number of cases. And that, by us, I don't mean we here in Denmark or Copenhagen, but internationally. We don't get them all when they call because layperson don't know that this is a cardiac arrest, and the dispatcher don't find out that every cardiac arrest is a cardiac arrest. So we thought, how can we solve that? We could either go through teaching the whole population. We are all doing that, but it's difficult. It is expensive, and you don't. It will take years. Or you could teach the dispatcher, provide better education, training, and give them feedback. And we do that. We all do that. But then we thought that maybe new technology, machine learning, could help us in better identify cardiac arrest during a real emergency call to a dispatch center. So we did a study on AI using machine learning in a retrospective study, and we found that AI is faster and more important, is better to find a pattern of cardiac arrest in an emergency call compared to our human medical dispatcher, and that is nurses and paramedics here in Copenhagen. And we went further on to a randomized controlled trial, which we have finished on real-time emergency calls. It has been submitted for publication, so I cannot reveal the results here. But there's a huge perspective, in my opinion, in saving more lives using machine learning in our dispatch centers. And the future is here. Technology is going to help us forward. So if you think back 10 months ago, New Year Eve, you were celebrating that, you were considering what's going to happen in 2020. None of us predicted the situation we have 3 months later. And none of us predicted the situation we have today, in October. And I think it's just going to be the same with new technology. It's going to bring us forward in ways we haven't considered earlier. So it's up to us to use the options that we have there. And this session is actually a very good example of that. So it takes a system to save a life. Read the chapter, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Freddie. It's a very challenging area of interest. There is a easy question for you from Michael Boben from Vienna. Freddie, what was the actual survival rate in Denmark?
Pardon, what was the
actual survival rate in Denmark?
Well, it depends on how you compare. If you take percentage, if you take the Utstein population, or you take the total number, the best way to compare survival is taking the actual survival, the absolute number per 100,000 or per 1 million, and that is 130. And we came from 20 10 years ago, but it's 130 now. So a lot of lives more have been saved. You could also say, what is the Utstein comparable survival, and it's 43% in Copenhagen.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. Another question from Janet Bray from Australia. Do you see artificial intelligence in dispatch as the gold standard or the dispatcher?
Well, it depends. It depends. When we discussed it, it has been artificial intelligence in dispatch is a supportive tool for dispatches, just like our algorithms, just like the guidelines we have for them. So they can make this. They can make decisions further besides what's in the algorithm and what the alerts they get from the machine learning. However, when I look at the results in the randomized controlled trial, and when I look at the future and see other areas within healthcare and outside healthcare, I'm convinced that machine learning is going to take away a lot of difficult tasks and make it easier for dispatchers to concentrate on what's really difficult. And if machine learning can find, say, 50–80% of the cardiac arrest with a certain security, then we should just react on that. Send ambulance with lights and siren and start guiding in CPR. So I think I cannot predict the future, but I'm quite sure that it's going to be more. It's going to have a bigger impact than any of us can imagine right now. But for actually introducing machine learning and artificial intelligence into dispatch centers, you're going to have some kind of formal approval and scientific evidence that it's actually better than humans, or at least as good as humans.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. If you want to guess back in the future, how many mounts to introduce machine learning, artificial intelligence, mounts or years? I hope mounts in your EMS service.
Yeah, we did a lot of work before that, because what you need to do that is you have to have a lot of data from the past that you're quite sure if this is a cardiac arrest, when was it identified, and you have the machine learning model needs to learn your language model and your structure there. And we spent 1.5–2 years in doing that, and at the same time doing research. But for instance, the language model today, the company that we work together with, Coty, they introduced that into English. It took 2 weeks to get it ready to understand English. And they introduced it into Seattle as well. And I think that this kind of technology is transferable between systems. So it just depends on, the barrier here is actually the conservative opinion or restrictions we have in introducing new technology in dispatch centers. For instance, the Good Sam app, making video streaming. Nobody's doing that in the world, but we are using video streaming for our daily life, talking to our colleagues, patients, and children. So you could use that in live streaming dispatch as well. So the barrier is actually in our mind. Just do it.
Okay, Freddie, thank you again. Last question from my side. If Andy or Hildegard want to ask you something else. Do you know that exists some research about the use of wearable device or some devices that recognize, for example, the pattern of agonal breathing directly at home as a tricoder? It's only sci-fi, or could be the future? Could be implemented in the future? What is your point of view?
The future is here. For dispatch center, we already have a law in the European Union that new cars, when they crash, they should send an alert, be able to send an alert to a dispatch center. So, and we provide that for cars. So why don't we provide that for people as well? So if you have a wearable that could alert somebody that this is VF, it could be sent to the dispatch centers as well. So that is obvious. And also the Good Sam solution, you will be able to measure pulse or saturation maybe consciousness also immediately from the scene, and making the dispatcher aware of things that they don't realize themselves. So the future is here, and it's we just have to use the opportunity with new technologies to save more lives.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. There is a question from for Andy from Naomi. World Starter Art is a long health educational campaign. However, is it possible to assess how many people that were trained over the World Starter Art Day campaign have saved life? Wow.
It would be so lovely if we could. We can basically, we're reliant on great case stories coming in. People, as with most things, using the hashtag on posts gives us an insight into what's happening, and in our various different countries we'll get case reports of people. We do know that lives are saved as a result of the Restart a Heart campaign. I've got a sort of very good friend now in the UK who are cardiac arrest survivors because of that and the associated campaign to get CPR onto the school curriculum. And I think one of the previous comments had mentioned about in the UK how Wales is a little bit behind England and Scotland, and it's some work that we in the Resus Council UK are doing some great collaborative work with BHF in Wales and St John and British Red Cross to try and get some equity over there. But yes, lives are definitely being saved. How we quantify that, it's difficult, I suspect, but I'm just comfortable in the knowledge that lives are being saved.
Thank you, Andy. Hildegard, do you want to?
Yes, I have a question to you, Freddie. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed your talk, and I find it very exciting. And either I have missed that, or I'm not quite sure, but I will repeat that though. You know, is this the machine learning or the artificial intelligence, is that being used, you know, in other places? Is it, for example, being used in Seattle, or are you the you know, what can you say, the entrepreneurs in using that kind of technology?
We started with this as a project, and we then did the randomized controlled trial, which ended. And this year we implemented for real time giving alerts to the dispatcher in our dispatch center. And we're going to work with other emergency critical, time critical issues like stroke and other medical issues in our dispatch center. The company, we advised them to get in contact and compare data from other countries. And I know they have been in contact with many others, including Seattle, and they compared some of the data from Seattle with the data from Copenhagen and found exactly the same results. And they have implemented that in Seattle as well.
Yeah, that's great. And well, we can all be looking forward to the results of your randomized control trial, because as we all know, you cannot say anything now. Your mouth is sealed for the moment, but we can look forward to reading that later on. I have another general question. Perhaps both you, Freddie and Andy, you could answer that. Because from what we have heard now today is that definitely technology is very helpful, and we need that in order to make systems save lives. So I'm just wondering, because probably many national resuscitation councils are thinking, you know, how can we enhance this, and how can we get more results out of systems saving lives? So do you have, can both of you perhaps give a good message or any advice to these national resuscitation councils of how they could start thinking about systems saving lives? I know it's a very broad question, but perhaps it would be a good and golden message to the different NRCs. So
from me, the first thing they can do is read the System Savings Lives chapter for the ERC proposed guidelines, to provide feedback, and you can do that below the video feed below this, because that is really the most up-to-date contemporary evidence around system savings lives, and it gives tips. There's a whole, as Freddie has mentioned, things like the Global Resuscitation Alliance have also talked about various programs, including EMS, availability of AEDs, training in CPR, and all the systemic governance processes around survival from out of hospital cardiac arrest. But that chapter, as well as the co-style that's been produced, is really the most up-to-date evidence around this, and to read that and see which elements are important and applicable to their particular communities. Because I'm sure, I think the Global Resuscitation Alliance says that every community can improve. I'm probably misquoting them there, but there's scope for improvement in every community, whatever state they're in. So yes, that would be my advice.
Thank you very much for. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would like to add. I agree. The chapter is worthwhile reading, and reading more than once. It gives the first guidance on actually saving lives. If you want to get into more details and the cases and examples, and sometimes that is what people need, then there is this the 10 steps to improve survival, which is actually a lot. It's on the Global Resuscitation Alliance homepage under resources. I can upload that reference to the website here. But there you will have a document written by Mickey Eisenberg where you have a lot of examples, calls, different issues that is handled, including for new technology. And that you have reference there. It's not all scientifically proved randomized controlled trial, but it's good. It's a collection of best practice examples.
Thank you both for that. I think the message that you are giving is that, first of all, read the draft guidelines and give your comments on that. And just for your information, you can access these system saving lives guidelines on the platform of this session, and of course on the ERC website as well. So we encourage you all to read that. And then also for the NRCs, I mean, this is probably their have to be, one of their milestones, and their task to look into, what they can do, and possibly get many ideas from reading this chapter. So, well, Federico, do you have something that you want to ask now? We have some questions in the Slido that we might still need to ask, and please, the audience, please write your message or your questions if you have. We have a few more minutes to go. Andy, I think you wanted to say something now? I
was just noticing on the Slido that Matt Denny has asked, reaching school children is obviously essential, but is there data on the average age of bystander CPR providers? How do we reach those next year? And that is an absolute critical point. Clearly, there's been a lot of work done around the world in terms of teaching children, and in particular trying to get CPR onto school curricula. Mainly because they are an ideal target audience. They're like sponges, they soak up new learning, and they don't have any preconceived ideas, and they love the sort of gamification and also the practical elements of it. And most importantly, they're a captive audience. So we can get a whole cohort of society in one go. And then hopefully they grow up with the right sort of learned behavior to be able to cascade onto their own children or other family members. So that has always been a bit of a priority, but clearly in the meantime, until they grow up and take over the world from us, there are many other communities where adults are the people who are having the cardiac arrest surrounded by other adults. So that's the whole point of the other messaging, to get out the simple message, the call, check, compress, of basically calling for help and making sure that compressions are ongoing, and that the emergency services are on the way. So I fully agree, Matt. There are other areas, and that's where the messaging needs to get out to as well.
Thank you, Andy. If I can add some comment about that, absolutely agree with you. Kids Save Life is an example. For example, in education chapter open for public comment, there is a section about the use of technology, serious game, and for example, a breathtaking picnic for the primary school, a lifesaver for the high school. So if you think at kids, they can activate the EMS through a simple telephone call. There is a nice video on YouTube that demonstrates that it's possible that kids can call EMS very early.
I think you're right. And there was a bit of a debate yesterday about the age of kids. And I'm a great advocate that we should be training all kids of all ages. But the actual physical ability to do CPR lies with those really around about 12 and above. It's not an age-defined thing. It's more of a body mass index thing, but approximately the age of 12. But we also know the kids will go home, they'll influence, and Andy Topher has put on the chat quite correctly, they'll go home and they'll influence people around them to actually learn how to do the right thing. So they are multipliers as well, which is fantastic.
I agree also, again, with you. If you think about the new statement, the Kids Save Life campaign around COVID-19. So the kids learn to wear a mask, wash the hand, and they come in the family and teach to the family the same principle in the same way as a CPR. So I agree with you. The kids is the next generation as a multiplayer, helps the family to have some good message from the community. Thank you, Andy. Hildegard?
Yes, people seem to be thanking you a lot for your inspirational talks, and I hope that will be something that they can take home with, from this Congress. I think the final comment that I would like to do here, I mean, obviously we cannot answer all the questions that has to do with cost, because, what you've been mentioning is technology, and we all know technology is not, without, it's not free. And so thinking about those countries who do not have a lot of money, what is possible? Do you have any solution to that, Freddie and Andrew, or either of you?
Yeah, I would like to comment on that because, for instance, you're talking about, we cannot provide a doctor, we cannot provide a nurse to countries with low resources, but we can provide new technology for them to get advice and first aid and CPR training, for instance, during social media or apps. So I think though the technology is often expensive in the beginning, I think it's part of the solution that you can actually reach more people and reach nearly the whole world, as one of my friends said when we challenged that. She said, "You think that we don't use new technology, but we have actually more smartphones than we have toilets," and that is right. You see the homeless in your own country, in Copenhagen, for instance. They are paying by mobile pay. They are using their app, and they are using their smartphone. They won't get up that new technology. They would get up their house, their car, everything, but not their new technology.
Okay, so we can think about this, spending money in order to save money, in a big way.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, just like social media, it's gonna make us more equal, but it's also going to create some other challenges.
Great, Freddie. Andy, anything you want to say as the final comment?
I fully agree with everything Freddie just said there. And if you look at the saturation of mobile technology, it is out there. But there are also other initiatives, low-cost mannequins. We've seen some great examples in presentations this conference alone of low-cost mannequins that can be developed as well. But some of the solutions don't even need mannequins. You can just use a cushion and other items as well. It's just mainly getting the message out there that it only takes two hands to save a life.
I think these were very good final words, Andy. And so I think we are very close to closing the session. Actually, we have to close now. So what I would like to do is to thank the speakers for their excellent talks and their inspirational talks. And I think you have touched many of the people who have been listening to you and the others. So very many thank you to you and all the audience. Before I close the session, I just want to remind you on the draft guidelines, which you can have a look at and have some comments put in on the ESC website and get some ideas out of that. And I think it's clear that from all the technology discussions, we have here, we don't know the solution yet, we don't know the answer, but the technology is helping us to work and go into the future, but we have no idea what the future is going to bring us. So keep on this good work. And again, thank you very much for a nice session. Have a nice rest of the Congress. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody.
Bye.
Anywhere allows instructors to continue teaching resuscitation skills to communities anytime, anywhere, while students can join from the safety of their homes. Our course delivery solution allows instructors to train classes not only in an entirely virtual session, but also in traditional, safe classroom settings. It can even be scaled up for mass CPR events, where hundreds of learners can train simultaneously using any type of mannequin available. Conducting a training session is easy. Instructors create a class via Anywhere platform, and learners simply enter their classroom code into the QCPR Classroom app on their smartphones. Then instructors have the freedom to train their learners in various resuscitation skills according to the learning objectives. Having completed the course, instructors will be able to evaluate the performance of the students and their own progress via a dashboard to continuously improve their courses, to empower lifesavers anywhere.